Hi, welcome to the Synchronicity Show. It is your host, Kevin Wathey. And in today's episode, I sit down with the one and only Paul Fishman. Paul is the host of the Top 100 podcast, The Road to Self-Love, and creator of the Self-Love Diet, a 6-month transformative program that teaches you how to say yes to yourself, ditch the people-pleasing, and live the life you've always wanted. His mission is simple: to empower and inspire you to trust that you are enough exactly as you are, which we spoke a little bit about just before hopping on the air today. Paul has been lauded for creating safe spaces, building a fiercely dedicated community, and helping thousands of humans love themselves unconditionally. Paul, welcome to the show, my man. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for the conversation.
As am I, and I kind of want to dive right on in today and right on into self-love to begin with, if that's okay with you. And
absolutely.
And the first thing to kind of maybe set the floor or tone for the episode is in your opinion, what is self-love?
Well, in my opinion, self-love is everything. Self-love is what we need in our lives to truly reach fulfillment. It's what needs to be the foundation of any transformation, decision, journey that we embark on. And if you're looking for a definition of self-love, I like to look at the two words that are hyphenated together. The word self is the individual, and love is devotion. So when we operate from a place of self-love, we're operating from a place of our devotion to our individuality. Like, what makes you, you, what makes me, me, and that in itself is so beautiful, just to fall madly head over heels in love with the individual that you are. Because so many of us neglect who we really, really are to try and fit in or to get other people's validation. And that, I really think is the crux of what keeps us unhappy, feeling alone, helpless, and out of control. It's distancing ourselves from who we truly are.
I think you touch on a really important point there, one that we all almost subconsciously know, and that's that the belief or criticism or need for approval from others is kind of the root of all evil in an essence here. And if we know that, and I think society as a whole really does know that, why do we still continue down that path where we are so dependent, or maybe dependent isn't the right word, but so in search of that validation from others?
Well, I mean, this is kind of probably hard to hear, but because it feels easier. It feels easier to reject ourselves and put all the weight on what other people think of us. And, it's almost on the lines of playing the blame game, right? It's a lot easier to point your fingers out and maybe blame your parents for forcing you to go to college when you really didn't want to go, than actually acknowledging that you didn't have the courage to speak your truth, or you didn't maybe know that you didn't want to go to school. And this is kind of taking a play out of my book, because I really didn't want to go to college. And I, for so long, was so angry at my parents for forcing me to go to college. And I know it sounds like eye rolls, kind of privileged, because there are so many people who wish they could go to college. But, when we sit and we look at, oh, what are people going to think of me on Instagram? Or what are my parents going to think of me, or my friends, or my family, or whomever it is? We lose ourselves. And it's a lot easier to focus on other people than to focus on ourselves, because it doesn't hurt as much.
That's very, very true. And it makes me think about the fact that when it's failure in a sense. If we want to almost classify it, it's by not thinking about yourself, you don't have to accept the failure that is what could potentially be described as failure. Maybe that's the best way to put it right there. But I think when you actually boil that down, it's not failure that we're most afraid of. It's the fact that we have the potential to become more than we are, but in order to become more than we are, we have to change who we are. And to change who we are, we need to recognize what we are. And in order to do that, you can't blame someone else because there's no one else to blame other than yourself. So it's the safe decision because you're comfortable in failure because you failed your whole life. That's what's brought you to where you are today. Small little failures, small little trials and tribulations that have shaped who you've become. And to negate that then would be you having to recognize your shortcomings, which is probably the scariest thing in the world.
Mm-hmm. Period.
Mic drop.
We can end the conversation now. Great episode.
Yeah, we are 5 minutes and 44 seconds in, and there we go. Mic drop. We are done for the day today. Okay? Let's backtrack here then. So, because we have where we're going, what brought you, and really, like I said, the why behind the who. What brought you, and taking a note out of your book, what made you uncover this self-love journey? Why did this become important for you in your life?
Oh, because I was on the complete other side of the spectrum, like intense self-hatred. I was miserable in my life, and I didn't have a life that I should be miserable in. I was living in New York City, which was always my dream to live in New York. I'd worked my way up the corporate ladder at an amazing company, and I had all of these things that I could call my friends to brag about, but none of it felt good for me. And I had a poor relationship with my body and who I was as an individual. I didn't know myself. And there was one specific day where I woke up, it was my day off, and I was looking in the mirror and I didn't recognize the man staring back at me in the mirror. I was like, I didn't know who Paul Fishman was. And that point, I realized that I had to make a change. And I kind of just like ripped the carpet out from underneath myself, pulled the Band-Aid off, and it was covering all of my arm hair. So just like really painful. And I did it. And, I left the relationship that I was in that was emotionally abusive. I quit my job. I left the apartment I was living in. I left everything and started from square one. And it was the hardest thing I'd ever had to do because I realized at that moment that I had to take radical responsibility for my life. And yes, I had the job because I loved calling my parents to tell them how much money I was making or, some exciting thing that happened at work that day. But it didn't excite me. The money didn't excite me. The job didn't fill me up. Nothing made me feel good about being the me that I was. And I didn't know at the time that I was setting out on a self-love journey. It really took me like almost a decade to look back and be like, oh, wow, that's when I started my self-love journey. And so I was on that just walk of life, choosing myself first as often as I could without, of course, doing my best not to hurt people, but you're going to hurt people on the self-love journey. That's the thing that I think a lot of us kind of get confused on our journey to self-love is that we think it's going to be rainbows and butterflies. And I tell all of my clients this, and they always roll their eyes when I say it, but self-love is the hardest thing you're ever going to do. And it's kind of like marketed to us that it's going to be easy and fun and, oh, just love yourself. But no, there are so many days where I'm just like, I'm to love myself today. Like, damn it. I don't want to do that. Like that's no fun because it means so much more than just like going and doing a face mask or getting a massage. Like it's way more than that. So, the next piece of the journey to really stepping into embodying self-love as my career, my purpose, and my passion was I fast forward around 6 years from when I had that like looking in the mirror moment. And I was a personal trainer. And I had moved from New York City back to San Diego, was living with my family in my childhood home, which is a tough pill to swallow at 29. And I'm there and I'm training a client and she's sitting on the floor with her. And she says, Paul, I just need to lose 3 more pounds and then the guy that I'm dating will definitely like me the way that I like him. And it kind of blew up my world because I realized that every single person that I had worked with as a personal trainer, as a spin instructor, Pilates instructor, all of the different fitness things that I did, they were all doing it for external validation. And I wanted to figure out why. Why do we put other people's feelings about us ahead of our own? And it just set me on this journey, and I I really like looked at all the things that I had done in therapy and just like falling on flat on my face and figuring out how am I going to make this decision? You know, all the advice I received, I kind of like crafted together a little roadmap, and which then turned into my program. But the reality is that self-love, there isn't one specific day that I was like, this is what I'm doing. It's a decision that I have to make every single day. It's a decision that you get to make every single day. And some days I don't love myself, and I'm cool to say that because self-love isn't finite. I'm not going to wake up one day and be like, yes, I finally have that self-love six-pack and I never have to work at it again. Like, that's not how it works. So there wasn't one particular moment in time where I was just like, oh yes, self-love, that's it. And some days I'm just like, is it really self-love? Is it? Or maybe I just really need to go back to the gym again. You know, like I can't, I don't know. Every day is different for me.
You've essentially, and I do want to talk about your program because you've done something that with the consulting company that I run, that I see and speak to a lot of people who want to take their mess and make it their message in an essence. And they want to coach people or help people, and they've set out on this journey, but then like, who the hell is going to listen to me and why? And I want to revisit that. So we're going to come back to that in a little bit. But before we do, you did and said something that most people don't do. And that's the courage to get up and leave. The courage to say, I'm not happy. I don't like my job. I don't like my relationship. I don't like my partner or my apartment. I need to make a change. And in order to see change, you need to make change, but change is scary. Change is uncertain. So where did that courage to get up and leave, where did that come from? What spurred that?
I was going to lose my life. I couldn't go another day. No, I had a drinking problem. I had a shopping addiction. I had a poor relationship with food, and it was really like my life or staying comfortable in the discomfort. And I know that not everyone listening to this is going to have these extremes, right? And the thing about like making a change is the first thing is like noticing like, hey, you want to make the change. If you're listening to this, I guarantee there's something that you want to do that you're not doing. And the big question is why? Why is it okay that you're not doing the things you want to do? And also, like, sometimes the hardest decisions we make are also the easiest decisions to make, because you are the only one that matters. And I know it's like really, really hard to hear that. So I want to say it again, like, you are the only one that matters. Because taking it back to my message about self-love being the devotion to your individuality, like what makes you you. You were put on this planet with very specific gifts, and no one else has the gifts but you do. And if you are keeping them to yourself, like let's say you're, an accountant, but you just want to be an artist, and you're not giving yourself permission to use those amazing watercolor skills that you were given, you were gifted by the universe. You are not only keeping that from yourself, but you're keeping that from every other single person who can receive your gifts, who can maybe be healed by your art. And if you put this into the context of your life, like, what is it that you really want to do that you're not doing? And why is that okay? Who decided that that was okay? These are the kind of questions that over time I'm like, it really is that simple. It really is that simple just to decide today that. And there's so many people who are going to be like, no, it's hard. Because my partner doesn't like when I do art, or my partner doesn't like this, or my kids this, or my boss that. Okay, well, notice again that you're giving all of your power away to someone else. And it's making the conscious decision to take your power back via choosing you, that is way, way out of the construct of how we live our lives these days. And it's not that it's hard, it's just that it's different. And I could just preach on and on and on and on and on about that, because I swear it when it hits it and it lands and it sinks in, you're just like, oh wow, why didn't I think of that earlier?
Well, it's binary, right? It's either a hell yes or it's a no, or at least it should be. And you or we as a society are almost conditioned to like cloud it with this gray area of like, you give someone else the power, or you say, it'll happen when it happens, or it'll work its way out when it does. But then that's just an excuse for not actually then going after. And this might even bring us back to the beginning. It's an excuse then for actually trying and working at becoming who you want to be, because that's the scariest thing. What if I actually do leave this abusive relationship and then become who I want to be? What if that? Like, it makes me it makes me think of the Jim Carrey commencement speech, if you've seen that, from Maharishi. He talks about growing up watching his father fail at what he didn't want to do. So you can fail at what you don't want. So why not take a chance and do what you actually want to? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to fail at that? Great. At least you tried.
That's beautiful.
So reflecting back then and seeing where you're at now and having this kind of 30,000 foot view of your life and where it went, knowing the place and the destructive and negative place you were in previously, what would be your advice for someone who's currently in that maybe can't see the light at the end of the tunnel? Or how, if you had to do things over again, how would you approach it if you would do anything differently?
Well, something that's really changed my life today, and ultimately I think would change anyone's life, is a simple reframe of, instead of looking at life happening to us, what if life is happening for you? And this can really, really empower those of us who are stuck to get out of that stuckness. For instance, if I'm back where I was and I'm thinking, okay, why is this happening for me? Why am I continuously being slammed against a wall whenever I ask for the things that I want? Well, maybe they're not really the things that I want. Why is it that I continue to attract the same type of partner who is emotionally abusive, manipulative? Well, if this is happening for me, I can acknowledge that these aren't the types of people that I actually want in my life, but it was so much easier. And I'm just kind of on this hamster wheel. So the to us is the hamster wheel. When we say, why is this happening for me? You can step out of that hamster wheel and walk away. You know, if I continue to reach for the alcohol, what is the alcohol trying to numb? If the addiction is happening for me, it's to keep me from witnessing the pain. And what's in that pain? It's looking deeper into it. So I would ask, instead of pointing your finger out, what can I do differently right here now to change things? Easier said than done, of course. A lot of these things that I talk about are easier said than done. And that's why people come to me, because they're like, hey, can you hold my hand through this? And I'm like, absolutely. Let's pull through the sludge together, because I'm in my own sludge right now, different sludge than I was 10 years ago, but pushing through that sludge right now. So life is happening for you 100%. And if you're unwilling to learn the lesson, the universe will continue tapping you on the shoulder and then, nudging you. And soon enough, it'll be a 2x4 on your face. But, it's just, when do you want to learn the lesson? And when are you ready to step up to be the most empowered, authentic, true version of yourself?
It's like when you point your finger out, you neglect the 4 that are pointing back at yourself, right? I feel like
that's...
You got what I'm putting down there?
Yeah. Well, I just remember what I used to work in retail, and my manager would teach us, she said, always point all of your fingers out at the person or where you're going. And I was like, no, she didn't even know what she was doing there.
There was some subconscious messaging there that she was trying to pass down. So I like where this is heading, and I like what you're talking about, kind of like making yourself the most important piece, because really that's all that matters then in your life is you, but that can often also feel quite selfish. So how do you reframe that mindset where then self-love becomes selfish?
Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of touched on this already a little bit, because this is a big issue that a lot of my clients' spouses or friends and family who are really against my clients loving themselves. Like they say, oh, you're so selfish. Self-love is so selfish, right? And as I said prior, when you love yourself and you're devoted to your individuality, then you show up with the gifts and doing the things that are not only going to heal you, but you're going to heal the world. So I would really like to say that self-love is the most selfless thing that you can do. Now, more often than not, when people are telling you that self-love is selfish, they're actually telling you that your self-care rituals are selfish. And this is a portion of the journey that can get a little bit selfish, and sometimes we need to check. And this is also an opportunity to kind of share the difference between self-love and self-care, because we really, really, really get told a lot that self-care is where it's at, right? Because self-care can be purchased. Self-care is the massage, is getting your hair done, is getting your nails done, is going to the gym, is taking yourself out for a fancy meal. Self-care we can really connect to. Self-love is not tangible, but self-care sure is. So who sells us self-care? The skincare companies. Capitalism in general sells us self-care. And they forget that the second that you push purchase on that Amazon order and it gets delivered in 24 to 48 hours, and then you're on to the next thing, they forget that like self-love can't be delivered on Amazon, right? A lot of people wish that we could hit that button. And this is also my journey as a business owner. Selling something that's intangible can be really challenging at times, because people don't know that they need self-love until they have self-love. And they're like, oh, wow, I really did need that. Like there's so much interesting conversation and wordplay that I get to use to convince people, because unfortunately I have to convince people that they have to love themselves to really accomplish anything. But we can really over self-care ourselves. And then it turns into this journey where you're searching for the next trip to take, or you're searching for the next handbag to buy, or the next car to purchase, or you're dreaming of the next big thing that's going to show up materially in your life, and you still feel empty, even though you're shoving more things into the compartment that is your life. And this is when we run into issues. And this is when self-care can become very selfish, because you're continuously looking outside of yourself to heal what's within, to heal your insides. And that's just not possible, unfortunately. I wish it were.
So in essence, elements of self-care can be the antithesis of self-love.
Absolutely. Especially if you're not self-caring with self-love. And this is something else that I talk about a lot, is that self-care without self-love is self-destructive. Now, a really simple way to infuse self-love into your self-care is with gratitude. I'm so grateful that I have the job that allows me to afford to take the vacation. I'm so grateful that I have the space in my day that allows me to rest. I'm so grateful that XYZ allows me to do XYZ, right? The gratitude is the self-love, because self-love is a mental and emotional act, while self-care is primarily physical. And that's where we get it really confused. And it's okay if you were confused up until now. Now, when you go get your hair cut, think of all of the things you can be grateful for. The fact that you have the money to pay for it, the fact that you have the time in your schedule to get your hair cut, the fact that you have a place that you go that you trust, the fact that you feel good about yourself after you get a haircut. I just listed like 5 things that you can be grateful for, all about something that people take for granted. My husband is bald. He wishes that he could go get a haircut. Be grateful that you can even get a haircut because you have hair, right? So it's like there's so many things that we neglect on our self-care journey that when you infuse those little gratitude moments, it changes everything. It'll 5-10x the impact of your self-care.
Do you have a specific ritual or intention that you set going about your day, or when going through these small activities that you can actually make mean a very big thing?
I think that like enjoying it for me, I, of course, live my life on social media, and a lot of us do love to share what we're doing. I think that for me, something that's really brought self-love into my day-to-day practice and the gratitude is leaving the phone down, not taking the photo. And because I swear, sometimes I'll go and I'll look at my pictures in my phone, but once I share it on Instagram, it's forgotten, right? There's something about the sharing culture that feels like you're sharing with other people, but you're taking so much away from yourself. So it's kind of tough, because navigating that as a social entrepreneur, as an online business owner, there is a part of this that I do get to show up and I do get to share so much. And at the same time, I can get burnt out on sharing. And then I get so angry sometimes about the engagement, not angry, but just like sad. I'm like, I wish more people saw that, or why aren't people seeing that? Or why do I have to continue talking about this? Why is this the only thing that the algorithm shows? Like all these things. And then I get to say, oh, wow, look at that. I'm blaming other people again for my own happiness. Maybe I just get to put the phone down.
That was going to be my follow-up there. Was now it's going back to the external validation of likes and comments on a third-party platform. How do you bridge that gap, or how do you differentiate between the two of when is the right time to share and when is the time that I need to take this in for myself?
For me, it's all about alignment. It's all about that feeling. And I ignore the feeling a lot. I'm not perfect, especially when it feels like I have nothing else going for me except for my Instagram following. Sometimes I can get into my head. We all get into our heads. And one of my superpowers is showing up really vulnerably and like not talking or not avoiding talking about the things that feel like silly to talk about. Like, I know people would kill to have 27,000 Instagram followers. But for me, I'm just like, I've been stuck at 27,000 Instagram followers for over a year, so it's just like, I've been there. I've done that, it's just like, oh, boo-hoo, Paul, and eventually I get to drop that story, because there's 27,000 people. I mean, granted, not all of them see my stuff, but like the people who see it are the people who are meant to see it. It's not, there isn't a set way that I can do things. I'm only human over here, dude. It's really, I would be lying if I sat here and said, I've got it all figured out, because I just posted a reel on Instagram that I was like, oh yes, this is it. And I'm like, why have only 100 people seen this? This was just for this. I didn't put any call to actions in the anything. So there's no reason for them to hide it from anyone. That's my big thing right now. But, and regardless, the other things show better, and it is what it is, and it's happening for me. Okay, so if it's happening for me, we can take it down this rabbit hole. Why is it happening for me? Okay, so to not put as much weight into Instagram or into getting new clients and focusing on my current clients, or focusing on things that are doing really, really well, like my podcast, or being on other people's shows, or resting, or celebrating the fact that I've built a business that allows me so much space in my day to have these conversations and to sit and just be. When was the last time you were actually a human being? I've been a human doing for so freaking long. and I'm just ready to be. And there's so much guilt and shame that passes through my body every single day when I'm not productive. But it's productivity is useless if it doesn't make you feel good. And so often posting to Instagram doesn't make me feel good. Showing up on social media doesn't make me feel good. And the funny thing is when I do things that feel good for me, this time last year, I took 2 months off of social media. I didn't post anything because I literally was like kicked off. Instagram censored one of my best performing photos ever. And I just felt so defeated. And then my friend posted about this phone that she bought called the Light phone, which is literally like a brick. It's like this big. And all you can do is text and get phone calls on it. That's it. And texting on it is a joke. Like it would take me like 2 minutes to respond to anyone's because it's like there's no autocorrect, all these things that we take for granted with our smartphones. So I order this phone, I get off of social media, and not only was that the most successful few months of my business ever, me not showing up once, I would send out emails every once in a while, but I felt so aligned with who I was. And sometimes I'm like, did you forget about that, Paul? Maybe you should just take your entire business offline. And that really scares me because I'm sure you can relate as an entrepreneur. Like we have to continue showing up or we don't know when the bills are going to get paid next. So at least that's where I am right now in my business. So that's living in that story of just like, if I don't show up every single day, how are people going to know where to find me? It doesn't serve me all the time. It serves me less than I probably would like to believe it does.
When you had the Light phone, it was more of you were leading with your own intuition in a sense, or you were approaching all decisions without any type of external influence because you didn't have that. And I mean, myself included, I know a lot of people get everything that they see and read from social media. And without that, I can only imagine what it would be like to not have any type of external influence that's then dictating how you respond internally yourself.
I mean, it was beautiful. You know, my meditation practice was so deep. I was reading books. Like, what is even a book? You know, like I was doing so many things that I really enjoy and had more time to connect with my husband and my friends. And granted, I was having fun along the way. Like I was doing a video journal that I planned on sharing on social media after when I came back. And, you know, eventually it was time to come back. And the interesting thing is that while I was gone, and I said I had some of the best months in my business. And so I had all of this cash that my business had brought in. And I was like, okay, I'm coming back to Instagram. My friend had just had a 7-figure launch. And I was like, it's time. It's my time for a 7-figure launch. And I was like, I hadn't even had a 6-figure launch yet, but I just decided I'm going to have a 7-figure launch. And so I pour all of this money that I made into this launch, like hire the copywriter, the ads people, all this stuff. The launch freaking tanks. One person signs up for the program, and it's not even someone who engaged in my lead generators, was served an ad. They just randomly searched Selflove coach on Instagram and saw that my program was enrolling and signed up. Okay. So if this wasn't a lesson to learn for like all the lessons, it just taught me that, first of all, being influenced by anyone else, because remember, and I hate to admit this, that like I saw that a friend of mine had a launch in the same niche as mine and did insanely well. I was like, I can do that too. Just, you know, reverse engineered what they did, worked with the same people, but I was doing it for the wrong reasons because I wanted to prove to somebody else that I could do it like they could. Had I maybe like saved some of that money, I wouldn't have really suffered for the next 4 to 5 months, just like really struggling. So I don't even know why I told that story, but it's all for a reason. It's happening for you. So ask yourself, when you're listening to that, why did I just hear that story? What's happening for me?
I feel like that's a great segue into where I want you to put your business owner party pants on for a second here.
Yeah.
And You spoke about this a little bit ago, and that's that you're selling an intangible. You've created a program around self-love, and the vast majority of people who want to help others or who are in that place of wanting to offer something that is an intangible can't then discover the value of it, or they don't know how to price it, or they don't know their own self-worth. How did you bridge that gap? How did you uncover not only the pricing structure of your program, but how you were going to build the frameworks and what you offered as well?
So this is a great question. And it wasn't just like, aha, I've got it all figured out. I just recently changed the structuring of my program and the pricing and everything, because I don't know if you're familiar with human design, but I'm a manifesting generator. And as a manifesting generator, I get bored very quickly and just want to like shake things up and try out new things. So this is what we're doing. And every time I shake it up, it works and it feels really good. And then I'm just like, okay, let's shake it up again and try something new. So when I stepped onto the path of online coach, as I mentioned, I was in the fitness world, and I really had this aha moment from personal training. And within that journey, I decided that I wanted to do an online program. My body was really, really suffering through all of the workouts that I had to do every single day. And I was kind of divinely gifted the framework of my program. I was on a flight to a friend's wedding, 2 hours from San Diego to Cabo, and basically got the entire framework. And the way that I started calling in clients was I just started telling my story. And that's really, my brand is a storytelling brand, because I share my journey to self-love. And there's so much in there that you can relate to something, whether it's, being overweight and wanting to lose some weight, or having an addiction issue, or being in a relationship that doesn't serve you, or wanting a different job, or having to move back home with your parents. There's so much in there that someone can grasp onto, that people started saying, if you were at point A and now you're at, well, not point Z, but close to it, then I can trust you to guide me and take me there as well. So ultimately, I had my first client sign up for my program, and I didn't have any of the modules recorded. I didn't know what I was doing. And I joke about this with her still, because she's a good friend of mine now. And she's just like, Paul, I had no idea that I was your first client. I had no idea that you didn't know what you were doing. And I was like, no, I knew what I was doing. But so I was just 1 week ahead of her. And listen, I was just throwing out prices to see what people would be cool with. Granted, anything that I was making online, I was so thrilled about, because I was trading my time for money as a personal trainer. And the fact that I could create one thing once and continuously sell it over and over and over and over and over again, that was pure magic for me. I remember when my first client signed, I made more money in that one sale than I did in 6 months of teaching Pilates. And I looked at my husband and I was like, what have I been doing? and I wanted to quit right then and there, but he was like, no, let's make this sure this is viable. But, eventually, with the pricing, which some people really struggle with, I found that I continuously get to raise my prices, because people, this is another problem that some people would say, oh, Paul, that sounds like a great problem to have, but I really struggle with it. For a long time, I was a self-love payment processor. People would pay and then they wouldn't show up. But then I get a testimonial saying it was the most amazing transformative experience they ever had. And I'm like, excuse me, wait, I don't get it. And it's because if you've never invested in yourself to the point where, because you don't love yourself, right? And then you say, I'm going to pay this guy a couple $1,000s. Oh my gosh, it changes lives. It is life-changing to invest in yourself. And that's something that, I try to tell people who are on the fence. I'm like, imagine what it will feel like when you choose yourself, probably for the first time. So I know I'm kind of all over the place and I haven't specifically answered your question because I'm still on that journey, but this is kind of what a podcast interview is about, right? We never really answered the question.
Very. So that's in regards to the pricing itself, and in regards to actually structuring then the online course, the most important piece that I would say people need to recognize is that all money is technically doesn't exist. Money is technically fake. It is all in your perceived value or perception of what it is that you're getting. So like you said, if you have never invested in yourself, there is a perceived value that you should be getting something in return from that. Therefore, it's internal rather than an external. And when you then shift that, now it's on them to actually get the results that your course was designed for. And I talk about this quite a bit, and there's two different stories that I tell. Is that, say an airplane breaks down, okay? Engineer shows up, he walks around the airplane, he goes, there's your problem, it's that one bolt. Be right back, I'll fix it real quick. Screws in the new bolt, goes, that'll be $10,000. Goes, what are you talking about? You just fixed that in 2 minutes. He goes, yeah, but you're paying me for my expertise, not for my time spent. So anyone who is trying to create an intangible, people are paying you for your experience, which is unique to you because everything that you've done up to this point in your life uniquely qualifies you for who you are, where you are, and your ability to then work through the sludge, like you had said. And without that recognition, you're negating, however old you are, those years of your life that prepared you for where you're at today. That's like the most selfish thing you could do, because by doing that, you're actually doing the clients who would benefit from you a disservice. That's the most selfish thing you could possibly do by not stepping into your power, by not being radically authentic to yourself. That's a disservice to the people that you are meant to help. And the second part of that is, I want to say it was Stanford, did a study and they took two groups of people out to dinner. They gave them the exact same bottle of wine. They told one group it was a $5 bottle and one it was a $75 bottle. The one who got the $75 bottle said that their evening was more enjoyable, their friends were nicer to be around, and that the food was more fulfilling and satisfied them in a deeper way. And what does that all come back to? That's all in here.
Mindset.
Exactly. So therefore, anything that you're offering comes down to the perception of the benefit someone's going to receive. And often you need a higher ticket price point in order to break through that. Because if someone pays you $20 and says, oh yeah, I'm going to get the self-love for $20, you're like, great. But then if they actually have to think about it and they feel something that they've lost, that's the whole problem with credit cards too. You swipe and forget. If you're actually exchanging something that's a large enough monetary value where you feel like you lost something, now what? Okay, now I have to see results. There's no other way.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me that I tell all of people with like price objection is like, it really has nothing to do with the money, right? Like, you know, with the payment plan options that we have here, like you can absolutely find space for this in your budget. I have no doubt in my mind. It's whether you think you're worth finding that space. Oh man, I've gotten blocked and blessed from that one. And I'm like, good, you know, I've got, it's a tough pill to swallow, that it doesn't have to do anything with the money, regardless of what the program is or how much it costs. If you wanted it bad enough, you'd find a way. And if you don't want it bad enough, that's okay. But you get to look in the mirror and tell yourself that you don't think you're worthy of it.
Well, it all comes down to priority. You say you don't have enough money, but you have the latest iPhone, or you have the Apple Watch, or you don't have enough time, but you're partying every weekend. Like, it comes down to the priorities that you have, because if you actually were to take this a step back, and let's give a very like drastic hypothetical here. Say your program costs $10,000, okay? You don't see it as a priority in your life. You don't see the benefit as a priority, so you neglect it. You say, I don't have $10,000. But if it's not about the money, then let's flip the script there. Say your dog, the love of your life, gets sick and you need to come up with 10 grand by the end of today in order to save your dog's life. What happens? You find a way to make it work. Because then it comes down to the priorities. This has now become a priority in your life. The vast majority of people aren't putting themselves first, like you had said. They're not a priority in their own life. Now they have to look in the mirror, and they're the ones who have to deal with that.
And for a long time as like a business owner, and so I used to do sales calls, and when I would see people just like be so into it, and then we get to make the actual decision, and they'd be like, no, I can't, it's too much. Like that would break my heart. And it was the best decision I ever did to release the sales calls, because I was so in it with these people, and it was so hard for me to witness people saying no to themselves like that. That I had to make a change, and I'm so grateful that I did, because it was really hard, and I don't know if it was just me, but like I don't know how people witness people saying no to themselves when so clearly they don't have to.
How did you go about releasing the sales calls? Was it a gradual process, or was it a rip the Band-Aid moment as well?
I just ripped the Band-Aid off. At first I outsourced them to a previous client who was really interested in like helping out. And I was like, yeah, you can do this. Here's the script. And then I decided when I wanted to up level my program. The story I was telling myself is that I was a Selflove payment processor because my program was too short and not enough money. So I doubled the time, I doubled the price, and between you and me, Kevin, people are still not showing up. So I'm just like, okay, so I'm going to double the price again. Like, what am I going to do? And then I'm like, okay, well, all I can do is continuously look at myself. What do I get to do differently? Is it because I'm not showing up as much? Is there something more that I get to do? And yeah, so I got rid of that. I made a sales page with an application. And then when you fill out the application, you get directed, if you get accepted, back to an enrollment page that has a training on it, Q&As, everything. And then I do social selling. So in DM. So I DM them after they get some approved. And I'm like, hey, there's something really exciting in your inbox. And I just continuously ping them and say, hey, do you have any questions? And I see if they read it. If they don't, I'll email, text. The thing about it is like, unless someone says no, I will continuously gently follow up with them. I also moved away from a launch period structure, and now I have an evergreen enrollment, which is actually really fun because when new people come in, it reinvigorates the group. So it's like it's a 3-pillared approach. So we do a weekly group call with me, and you get to show up and ask your questions. It's like really like life coaching with this foundation of self-love. So whatever's happening in your life, show up. We always do, I'll put like an affirmation card. We'll do a question where everyone who shows up gets to answer it live. And then that's like the part that I really, really love, because it's when I get to be of service and contribution. And then there's also a weekly milestone that if you achieve the milestone, you earn self-love dollars that you can spend in the self-love shop. And if you complete all of your milestones, you get entered to win an all expense paid VIP weekend with me, which I just awarded one in June, and it was so much fun. And then you get accountability VIP calls with my accountability coach, Amanda. So there's like these 3, it's a hybrid approach. And so far, it's been the most successful foundation or kind of recreation of the self-love diet, because people are excited to show up every single week.
I love that you've added the gamification aspect to it too, because that's something that's so often overlooked. And it's like, I mean, that's why we like Instagram. That's why we like Facebook. That's why we go on these social apps and play these games, is because of the gamification aspect and how it's really rooted in human psychology, not necessarily anything else. And until me and you become robots, the human psychology aspect will be there. Yeah.
So surprise, I am a robot.
Rips the mask off. The interesting thing is, like, you add the qualification steps and you add all of these other accountability things and the gamification and these other aspects to it. But in the same token, is you can only really lead the horse to water. You can't make him drink. And in the same hand, though, in the same token, is that you're not going to comprehend something until it's the right moment for you too. I could say something to you. I could give you all the tools necessary, but until you're really, back to priority, willing to prioritize yourself, it doesn't matter what someone tells you or what they give you, because it won't matter. That's like overcoming any addiction. The first step is that you need to have awareness around it, because until you do, no change is going to happen.
And that's the other thing that helps me sleep at night, because I've had hundreds, if not thousands, of applications to the program, and have not enrolled all of those people. And then, some of them, I'll see them on Instagram later on, or I'll find out that they're working with a peer of mine or someone else. And for a long time, I was just like, oh, that could have been my client. But now I'm just like, wow, I might have been the first step on the journey to self-love for them. And maybe I wasn't the right fit, or it wasn't the right time, but because they gave themselves permission to at least fill out my application, they opened up this idea for themselves that they are capable of doing it. And for whatever reason, they didn't choose this self-love diet, but they decided to work with someone else. And there's an interesting story. I used to do one-on-one coaching, and I had a girl sign up for 4 months of one-on-one coaching, and she paid for she paid for half of it up front. And she didn't show up once. I couldn't get a hold of her. She never showed up for our call times. She ghosted me. And I was in therapy, and I was like, I was talking to my therapist, and I said, I feel horrible. I have all of this money from this person, and they never showed up once. And my therapist said, Paul, maybe that's all they needed from you. Maybe this is their pattern. Maybe eventually they will realize that they can't just put money in the place of a problem and hope that it's fixed, that they actually have to do the work. And that really, really helps me too. That helps me sleep at night, to realize that, like, them paying me wasn't me taking money from them or holding it ransom or not doing my part, because I did my part, the part that they needed from me, which was just to hold space for them, receive that they're ready to love themselves, even if they're not ready to actually do the work. And that can be enough. And also to celebrate that, I basically got paid a nice chunk of change to not do anything. That's been a big thing for me.
In essence, though, you did everything. You did exactly what you needed to for that specific moment. And I know what you're saying, because that gets me to where it's like, you've spent all this money, and you assume that because you spent money, it's going to make you successful, or it's going to solve this problem that you've worked to overcome, or that you were at one point convinced is what you needed, but then you didn't take any action on it. And it's like, how can you? I mean, maybe that's just like the type A mindset over here, where it's like, well, I'm spending money on it, we're fucking doing it kind of approach.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that perspective a lot, though, because it's something that I've struggled with myself and recognized and seen. And it's something that's difficult to overcome and keeps you up at night, because you're like, what did I do wrong? How could I have fixed this? But at some point, it's like, you served the purpose that you needed to in that moment. And there's nothing else that you can do, especially when they're not allowing you to contact them, like that situation.
Amen.
Well, Paul, I want to thank you for your time today. And I really appreciate this conversation and where we have taken this and kind of the education that you provided for not only myself, but the listeners as well. I have a couple rapid fire questions to wrap us up today, if you don't mind.
I don't.
The first one being, in terms of your own personal development, who or what has had the biggest impact on you?
I would say my father, because he really taught me, that integrity is key. And he also held up a big mirror in my face when he messed up, and he allowed me to take ownership for where I mess up. So, my dad's been a really beautiful impact in my life. Not always positive, but even the negative has been really impactful for me.
If you could have a conversation with someone living or not, who would it be and why?
I just really need to know what's going on with Britney Spears. So, Britney, let's hang out. I want to hear all the dirt.
I've never heard that one before, but that is a fantastic response.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I always get some like prolific thing, and I'm like, wait a second.
So boring.
I'm actually very interested in that too. Let's see what happens. If you could have a conversation with your 10-year-old self, what is one thing you would tell yourself?
To stop trying to fit in and just do your best to belong.
Last but not least, in your opinion, what is the single most important thing someone can do to live a happy, healthy, and fulfilling life?
Love themselves.
I knew that one was coming, and I feel like that's a fantastic note to end on there, Paul. Well, thank you again so much for your time. I want to open the floor. Is there anything else you'd like to say or add before we wrap up today?
I just really want anyone to know who's listening to this that this message is for you and you alone. If you heard this, there is a reason for it, and give yourself permission to feel into the discomfort of whatever you're meant to learn or receive or get mirrored back to you. And I'm always so excited to hear from people who are impacted by my message. So if you feel called to head on over to Instagram and DM me at Paul Fishman with your biggest takeaway, I'd love to hold space for that and also have a conversation with you.
Beautiful. Paul, thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Hey, it's Kevin here, and before I let you go, I wanted to let you know that the complete show notes for this episode, as well as any other, can be found at kevinwathey.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a short review on Apple Podcasts. I love reading the reviews, and they're often the tipping point in helping us book some very hard-to-reach guests. Now, if you want to or would like to receive a weekly email from me called the Weekly Mindful Memo, head over to kevinwathey.com/VIP to subscribe. By signing up, you'll receive exclusive behind-the-scenes access and be the first to know about upcoming episodes, retreats, and more direct to your inbox. Again, you can sign up to receive the Weekly Mindful Memo by going to kevinwathey.com/VIP. Thank you for listening. Much love, and have a wonderful rest of your day.